Okay, so we're so glad everyone is here for today's special webinar. We have an incredible guest with us, Becca Schneider, an actor, a writer who has transformed her experience with hair pulling, which is a body-focused repetitive disorder, just like skin picking, into TRICH, an award-winning solo show. So Becca will share her journey, how creativity became a tool for healing, and what she's learned about shame, mental health, and recovery. So we hope this conversation brings you some insight, a sense of hope, and support. So let's dive in. Welcome. Thank you so
Thanks.
much for being here, Becca.
Thank you for having me. I feel like there's a lot of pressure to answer these questions well.
Not at all, not at all. I'm very curious. You and I did have a brief conversation before we arranged this event. It was very brief. I think it was about 15 to 20 minutes.
Mhm.
I got to know you a little bit better, a little bit. So I'm really excited for today's webinar to get to know you a little bit more. So let's get into it. We have a lot of questions to get through.
Yes. Yes. Meryl sent me this incredible outline of organized, categorized questions, and I didn't really have time to prep, so here's hoping.
It's going to be amazing. I can guarantee. So, okay. Can you share a little about your journey with hair pulling? Just, when it started and how it evolved over time.
Sure. It started when I was 13 or 14. I didn't know that it had started because it was just I was at that age where you start learning to tweeze your eyebrows, and I
Hmm.
was just trying to get a good shape until there was no shape remaining. And
Yeah.
so I had a rough few months of no eyebrows, and then they grew back in over the summer because I didn't have privacy for a few weeks. And I kind of thought that was the end of it. And my sophomore year of high school, or in the fall, so when I was 15, it shifted to my scalp. I don't know why it occurred to me to try that, but I was
Mm.
downstairs at my desk doing my homework and my hand was wandering, and that's when it began, and it kicked into high gear very, very, very quickly. So within a matter of uh 8 months, I would say I had pretty much I had hair down. It was pretty long then, like middle of my back maybe, or shoulder
Yeah.
length at least, and it was all gone by the end by that summer. So things moved very, very quickly, and then of course that's just been an ongoing uh I don't want to say battle because that's so violent,
Mm.
but
Mm.
it was violent, I suppose, at the beginning. An ongoing struggle, on and off, depending on where I've been. And I mean, I could talk for a very long time about each stage of my process of where I have been and my relationship to it. But yeah, and I'm 40 now, so it's been over half my life, and uh,
Mm.
definitely has had a major effect on my existence. It's so crazy to talk about in like I'm getting used to it now, but it's still kind
Yeah.
of wild that I'm
Yeah.
here with you talking in front of
Yeah.
however many people are on a recorded webinar, sharing my biggest secret, the thing I kept
Yeah.
most hidden for years. It's pretty wild.
Yeah. And it is, and we'll definitely get to that. And I just want to just take a second just to acknowledge what you're doing right now. You obviously do talk about it publicly, and you obviously have a show, and we'll speak about that in a few minutes. Um, but I mean, still doing this, I can't even imagine that it could be overwhelming, scary, anxious, and a whole bunch of other emotions that are going through you possibly. Um, and I just want to say to you that you're obviously incredibly brave for
Well,
showing up
thank
here
you.
and sharing your story with us.
Well, actually, what's wild about it is that I'm actually not feeling nervous or overwhelmed or scared to
Hmm.
have this conversation. That's
Hmm.
the insane part to me, is because I think my younger self would be really astounded by the fact that I'm
Yeah,
so honestly casual about it at this point in
yeah.
life. relationship to it.
So I wanted to ask, from when you were plucking your eyebrows at 13 and then going 8 months after that to basically, removing all the hair off your head, you were around 14 then, I'm sure. 13, 14 years old.
My
Or
head
was it
started when I was
later?
15, so by the time I
Okay.
was 16, 8 months into my head pulling, I was pretty much like I had a very a thin pixie cut
Yeah.
look.
Yeah. So I'm just wondering, just with regards to how you sort of perceiving things now, what was going through your mind when you were 16 and that happened? Like, what did you think about what was going on?
Nothing good. I mean, I don't know if I
Yeah,
should be touting the inner self-talk that was happening at the time, but
yeah.
I thought well, for the first 6 months, which is actually in the grand scheme of things and compared to other people's stories, a short amount of time, but for 6 months I didn't know it had a name. I didn't know what it was. I thought I
Mm,
was the only person
mm,
who did it.
hmm
I didn't know why it was happening to me. I thought I was broken. I thought I was a freak. I thought I
hmm
was
hmm
a basket case. I thought I couldn't understand why I couldn't just stop that everybody's favorite
Yeah.
question.
Uh-huh.
And because it was destroying me from the inside and the
Yeah.
outside. And at a time where like
hmm
vanity and looking cute in high school is it's so
mm
important when it sadly shouldn't be. But yeah, I was extremely depressed, and it was a very, very dark time that um
mm
even though I'm so far away from that now, I always kind of it can loom, it can like lurk and make me nervous if I'm having a bad day, be like, oh, I at any moment I could turn back into that version of me, which isn't actually the reality, but it's always
Yeah.
kind of sneaking up on and trying to scare me that's closer than it actually is.
Yeah. So knowing what you know now and being where you currently are, what would you say to her, that 16-year-old who's confused, feels alone, feels like a freak? What would you say to her?
I mean, this is so cliche, but I would say
Mhm.
it gets better.
Yeah.
I would say you're going to be okay. You're going to get a handle on this. You're going to figure this
Mm.
out. This isn't forever. This isn't permanent. It feels like this is going to be the end of you and that this is going to swallow you whole. And it might for a bit, but it's
Yeah.
not going to. You will
Mhm.
actually come out on top of it, and you actually will be able to help people with the same
Mhm.
situation. Um, it's funny, I know we haven't started talking about my show yet, but we wrote it by my directors were giving me a series of writing prompts because I'd never written a play before. And one of the prompts was write a letter to your 15-year-old self. And when we
Okay.
started writing this, or when I started writing this 4 or 5 years ago, I had nothing to say to her. My letter
Mm.
was, I had empty words and I was like, I don't know what to say to you. And the fact I'm just reflecting on how easily all that just came, like even the
Yeah.
difference of me at the beginning of this process of creating this piece and now it's so drastic the way I feel about my younger self. I would say I think
Mhm.
self-compassion is probably the most important thing to have and to hold on to
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
in the darkest moments.
Yeah. That was the next question I actually wanted to ask you was, which kind of somewhat led to it now, is what inspired you to create Trick, the show, and how did the process of writing and performing it impact your journey?
I will try to condense this. I mean, again, I could talk about that for a couple of hours, but I wanted to write this when I was in the middle of this. I had this thought when I was 17. I thought I should make this a play so that other people know about what this thing is. I wanted to teach people and I wanted to make something out of this horrible thing that was happening to
Mm,
me and kind of make it worth it in a way. And but I
Yeah.
was nowhere near healthy enough to make that happen. So it kind of just sat in the back of my mind for 20 years. And my two of my friends, Jen Haltman and Casey Pfeiffer from college, who are my collaborators and co-directors, started to work it out of me. Jen thought, based on where I was, I finally found a good therapist at that time, and she thought I might be
Mm.
ready to take this on. And as I said before, we dove in, and they started giving me weekly writing prompts. This was all we started meeting right before lockdown. So most of the
Mm.
writing process, actually all of the writing process, was done over Zoom over that year and a half. And they would
Yeah.
give me prompts and I would write during the week, and we would meet and I online, and I would read what I'd written, and we just sculpted a piece out of 60 some odd pages of kind of free writing, which I was just
Wow.
scribbling a bunch of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the creative process was, well, A, it was so helpful because we were living in such a, I mean, it's still kind of an incredibly
Mm.
dark time, but a different time where we were
Hmm.
so isolated. And this is such an
Hmm.
isolating experience. And getting to
Yeah.
have an artistic project when everything else stopped
Hmm.
was
Hmm.
hugely beneficial. And on top of it, that I got to have this project that was also going to be extremely therapeutic and cathartic
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
um, challenging to move through it, because I would work on it with Jen and Casey, and then I would read parts of it to my therapist, and I was just living in this space for
Hmm.
uh, a good amount of time, um, and then when we actually got to start sharing it, and I got the response and learned that we of course tweaked and worked on it and honed it until it was really, really tight and in good shape, but getting the feedback from people and meeting strangers and talking to people, and that's been a whole other piece of how of the healing
Yeah.
journey. Like, it was
Yeah.
healing for me to just
Yeah.
do it, and then now to have these exchanges with people takes it to a whole other
Mm.
level of I can't believe it. It's great. I lost my way
It's
at the end of that
amazing.
question, but
No,
you get it.
I do. I'm curious, if you didn't write this play, where do you think the journey would have taken you?
Ooh, no one's asked me that before, Meryl. If I didn't write this play, I think I would, hmm, I think I would still be pretty steady on my feet, but not where I am right now. I think this
Mm.
I was able to achieve like leaps and bounds in my recovery because of
Yeah.
the writing and sharing of this piece. Because even I was a year into therapy with my current therapist when I started writing this, and the difference of where I was in just even just that year's time, things were starting to accelerate
Mm.
because I was finally getting to a place where I was starting to have compassion for my younger self and chip away
Mm.
at the shame element, because that was really the thing that was the my main roadblock at that point in my
Mm.
journey with trick was less the behavior. I mean, I was still pulling, but it
Mm.
was the shame that was driving it, and I
Mm.
needed to
Hmm.
address that. Um, but I don't actually know if I would. I mean, I certainly wouldn't be having this conversation with you or in any
Yeah.
public forum. I wouldn't. My name would not be associated with Trichotillomania on the internet. That I don't think that would have been something that I
Yeah.
would have welcomed with open arms, or hesitantly open
Mm.
arms. And I, yeah, I'm going to venture to say that I, I actually think eventually I would have, if I hadn't written the play now, I would have written it in a few more years. I think this was always waiting for me to do it. I think
Yeah.
the fact
Yeah.
that it had been sitting in me for so long meant that
Yeah.
it was going to happen sooner or later.
Yeah. Well, that's beautiful that it was fate. And luckily it came a lot sooner than
I mean, I
it
would have
obviously
loved,
not.
would have been great if it had been 10 years earlier. I needed
Sure,
it earlier, but I
sure.
wasn't, that's what I keep telling, I always say, I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready for this until.
Yeah, 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 yeah. So we've spoken about the show. What is the show? What, for anyone who doesn't know what the Trick show is, tell us a
Mhm.
little about it and what people can expect. Um,
Sure.
I really wish that I could be part of, be able to go and see the show. So help me live vicariously through
Okay,
you.
the elevator pitch. So
Yeah.
Trick is a solo show. It is a 75-minute play with me talking about my life, like my decades long experience of living with Trick and other BFRBs. And it's filled with stories and anecdotes and 90s references and a lot of humor. It's very funny because I can't imagine going to see 75 minutes of just somebody crying and being depressed. Like I wanted, that's also a defense mechanism of mine. I make jokes whenever I can. And so it's actually a laugh out loud and then cry out loud show where we've been touring it basically regionally. We've been bringing it around to New York and New Jersey and Pennsylvania and Florida. And we've started performing it at conferences, mental health conferences as well. And we have returned to Luna Stage in West Orange, New Jersey, where we were last in December of 2023. We were named one of the top New Jersey productions of that year, and they have invited us
Amazing.
back. And we have this 3 week run there. We just opened this past weekend on Saturday, and
Yeah.
we have I think eight or ooh, a heart. Oh, look, it's flying.
Yay.
8 or 9 performances left of this particular run. And
Yeah.
um, yeah, I see the play as sort of an offering of like, here's my
Mm,
story, here's my
mm,
thing. Everybody's got a thing, whether it's a BFRB or not.
mhm.
Everybody's got something that they don't want other people to know
Yeah.
about or that they have shame
Yeah.
about, they feel
Yeah.
alone in. And this is mine, and I kind of offer it up to people. And I think by the end, people feel like they know me very well and feel like their story's been told, even though it's a different story. And then I get
Mm,
to chat with them afterward, and we have this really lovely interaction and exchange of feelings and stories, or just hugs and tears. And yeah, but the show talks yeah, I teach people what BFRBs are for anybody who doesn't know, and I talk about what it was like, what it is, how it resonated for me, moments of getting caught, and then really a major, ultimately a deep dive into the worst of times, and then a deeper dive into the recovery aspect of it, and moving through it so that it's actually
mm.
a hopeful and uplifting story, ultimately, I hope.
Yeah. I definitely want to hear more about the after the show, what happens there, because that sounds really exciting. But for those, you said that you currently are in a tour. So if anyone is interested, how can they reach out to you or buy tickets or find where you're going to be at? How do they find all that information?
So our website is trichplay.com, trichplay.com. That's where you can subscribe to our newsletter there. You can follow us on Instagram at trichplay. And we post anytime we have a new run happening. And we're going to Pennsylvania again in September. Hopefully, eventually we'll make it elsewhere. We also occasionally do virtual events and stream the video of the show from the last time we were at Luna a year ago. If that's of interest, you can go to our website and email us at info@trichplay.com, and we'll put you on the list to reach out the next time we have another streaming event so that you can get a ticket and watch that. Of course, it's theater and it's better to see in person, but
Mhm.
if you're
Yeah.
I got an email from somebody in the Czech Republic the other week. If you're in the Czech Republic and
Well,
you can't make it to New Jersey, this is the next best thing. But Yeah. Right now we just have the September run planned, which hasn't been announced yet, and hopefully there will be more. And I ultimately hope to bring it to New York City for a more semi-permanent run, maybe off Broadway.
Yeah,
We can find
yeah.
investors. Uh, yeah. So, but currently we are running at Luna Stage through March 25th in West Orange, New Jersey.
So one thing, I've been in mental health for close to 2 decades. So I've just given away my age. So I've been involved in different organizations and different types of mental health challenges, depression and anxiety and all the sorts. Um, and I have genuinely never experienced a community the way I've experienced the BFRB, skin picking, dermatillomania, trichotillomania community. They are so incredibly just beautiful people, so compassionate, so kind, non-judgmental, just genuinely there to support each other and cheer each other on. So I know that with this community behind, hopefully we can see you in other places in New Jersey.
I hope so. I hope so.
Yeah,
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 the BFRB community has welcomed me so
yeah.
wonderfully. It just from,
I
I
can
mean, from the
imagine.
first time I ever went to a conference and met fellow
Yeah.
BFRBers to now getting to actually share the play with people. It's been, I feel very embraced by the community.
So I wanted to ask you, I know that you've been asked this question before, but when you're on stage in front of strangers, what does it feel like, going through like reenacting like what you went through? Obviously, it was a very difficult, dark time for you. What does it feel like doing that on stage, in front of a whole bunch of people?
I've done it enough times now that it's not super nerve-wracking or anxiety producing. In the beginning, it was actually, uh, oddly, it was harder to do for people that I knew, like for friends, and rather than I prefer to do it for strangers. But
Yeah.
now that I've had a few runs under my belt, um, it's I don't want to say it's easy, but it feels pretty natural to be up there and connect with people. And there are parts of the play that I don't like doing because they're
Mm,
particularly emotional or particularly
okay.
challenge. Like there's a part, I mean, spoiler alert, I don't know if that's like a thing about the show, but there's a part in the play where I read a journal entry that I wrote when I was 16 or 17.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't like reading it. It's very painful and
Mm,
really difficult to get through, but I knew it should be in the show. And so I did that to
mm,
myself. But whenever we're rehearsing for a new run of the show, I asked to skip that section as much as possible.
okay.
And
Yeah.
then of course I do it for the audience, and it's hard and I push through it. And but then I will look up and see that people are wiping away tears, or it's like, you can hear a pin drop, and I know, okay,
Mm,
pretty much
mm,
everybody in here probably has a journal entry that looks something like this, whether or not they pick their
yeah.
skin or pull their hair,
Yeah.
or has at least thoughts like this
Mm,
before that are
mhm.
so um, unkind to oneself. Um, so there are sections that certainly feel more vulnerable than others, but at this point, it's it's a pretty well-oiled machine, and I feel like I just kind of go on the ride and try not to get too in my head or too distracted by anything happening in the audience or noises outside, and just
Yeah.
do the show and see how it
Yeah.
goes. And hope
So,
that people are up for laughing. It's you never know. Sometimes houses think that it's not okay to laugh, and I try
yeah.
to be very
Yeah.
clear that we are here
Yeah.
to laugh and cry. But
Yeah.
yeah, hoping that the audiences, I want the more responsive an audience is, the more energetic and alive I feel on stage.
For sure. For sure. I can imagine that. So obviously we did speak about like how creativity can help people go through challenges, and obviously it definitely helped with yourself. You've also included like humor as a really important aspect of your show. Like it's really important to um, I don't know your intention if it is to like make light of it, and you know in such a dark situation. Um, just help us with that, like with regards to like the humor behind it.
I just think it's so important to laugh
Yeah,
about everything, not at things, but
yeah.
to and not even to like shrug it off as a joke as not being important. It's actually
Mm,
because it's
mm,
very important.
yeah.
But if we're only sinking in the dark place and can't find the humor,
Mm,
I
mm,
I don't know how to function like that personally.
mm,
Yes, it's often a defense mechanism, or maybe I'm deflecting, and that might be me in some ways. And we use that to our advantage in the show. I think the uh like I don't know if this is getting too into the nitty gritty, but that prompt of write a letter to your 15-year-old self. I didn't want to do that. So instead, I made a PowerPoint presentation about what trichotillomania is. I was like, here, I'm going to do this
yeah.
instead. To avoid the hard stuff, I'm going to focus on the facts. I'm going to make this happen. So we made that a part of the show. Anytime I
Mm,
start to feel too exposed, I go and hide behind my music stand and go back to my
okay.
presentation mode. And slowly,
Okay.
as I get more and more comfortable sharing, that
Yeah.
becomes less needed. And it's the same with the jokes. There's definitely still humor at the end of the show, but the self-deprecating or the deflective humor fades
Mm,
away as I get more and more sure of
mm,
myself and grounded,
mm-hmm,
which I think
mm-hmm.
it's we baked that into the journey of my character being me. And, I, yeah, but I also just don't think it would be fun to watch or interesting to experience if there weren't
Yeah,
laughs.
yeah.
God, I hope people actually. I'm imagining this group seeing it and being like, "This isn't funny." No, it's funny. I also really like assuring people that it's funny because, again, who wants to go see a 75-minute depressing show? I don't.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and so yeah, I think humor is just
You've ma
crucial for me, and I
you've
think
made it accessible to people, which I think is also important.
yeah, and I think one of your questions and that you emailed me that about like something that I learned in the process, my collaborators
Yes, I
and
was
I
going to ask you that.
realized as we started to share it, the more specific I got about
Hmm.
my thing about hair pulling, the more universal it became, which is not what we expected. You would think
Yeah.
that, oh, the more general it is that will make it more relatable, but it's the opposite. It was
Mm,
I mean, I'm going into the detailed explanation of what it's like to pull a hair and how it feels and how I spiral afterward or what that experience is like. And people who do not pull their hair, people who do not have a BFRB, people who are not in this community connect just as much, which
mm,
really surprised me. I was expecting this to kind of only speak to people who had this
hmm,
exact experience.
hmm.
But it's actually even makes it even more inclusive in that way, or I feel more a part of the world that everybody kind of has an experience like this because shame is sadly very universal.
Exactly. And it just reminds me about common humanity. We're able to relate to each other because we all suffer
Mhm.
in different ways. But the fact that we all suffer in some type of way, we're able to connect with each other on an incredibly deep level.
Absolutely.
So I wanted to ask you then, we've mentioned shame, and you've obviously expressed that shame is a theme in the show. Um, so how did you learn to navigate those feelings?
Um, I don't know how to answer that in a quick 2-minute soundbite because it took 25 years. Um,
Yeah.
I think. so much of it was what my therapist kind of helped guide me to do in slowly learning to embrace my younger self and not hold such blame and resentment and of my like past self. Another big theme of the show is I have these photos of myself, of my younger self, that I used to keep locked away. Most photos of me from back then are gone because I made my parents throw them out, but I do have these few pictures.
Yeah.
And my therapist at before I started writing this play was making me put them out around my room. So every day I would get up and like go to my dresser and there's a picture of me that I never want to look at, or over by the in the bathroom or over wherever it is. And I had to practice uh, speaking kindly to myself and not having those
Mm-hmm.
knee-jerk reactions of, oh my God,
Yeah.
why am I out in public? I can't believe I'm smiling. What's wrong with me? What was I doing? What was I thinking?
Yeah.
And
Sure.
practicing the actual practice of having compassion for the fact that I was really, really struggling and didn't know
Mm-hmm.
what to do and was doing the best I can
Mm-hmm.
or doing the best I
Yeah.
could, and
Yeah.
that I was very sick and unwell. And like, if that were a friend of mine or if that were my niece or, like just the way
Mm-hmm.
that we would, of course, be so kind to somebody else in our lives, but are so rarely to
Yeah.
ourselves.
That's really
Um,
difficult. Yeah.
it's so, and it was a lot of practice. And then, and it was also very conscious, like intentional, like it felt very forced, like when you pretend to be confident until
Yeah.
one day you actually
Yeah.
might be. It was kind
Yeah.
of like that. This really forced, it's okay, you're okay, it's okay, you're okay, until
Mm-hmm.
kind of I woke up one day and realized that those feelings weren't as intense as they once were. But it wasn't an overnight thing. And it wasn't like I
Mm.
made the play and I was magically better. Even as I've done the play, I've changed things in the script and I've still like deep dive with stuff with my therapist about what my relationship is to this in this moment. It's always
Yeah.
shifting, but
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
it's yeah, it's a slow process. But the fact that I'm on this end of it now, not that this is the end, it's going to keep going, but this piece
Yeah.
of the
Yeah.
journey and knowing how I used to feel, it does kind of astound me that it I came this far, that it was even possible to think about Trick or my younger self in such a,
Mm-hmm.
dare I say it, positive way. Um,
Yeah.
and that was ultimately the thing that helped with um, getting a handle on the behavior, was um, the kindness and the compassion, rather, because
Mm-hmm.
the shame drives it. The shame is
Yeah.
what really, I think, pushes and
Yeah.
continues to move that cycle, that vicious cycle along.
Yeah. And obviously, just adding to what you're saying, shame is so closely linked with stigma. Um, and around mental health, obviously stigma is incredibly high. And I think with time, it is becoming a little bit better. Um, but with BFRBs, stigma is still very strongly present. What is your perspective on stigma, specifically around BFRBs, and what do you think we could do to try and shift it into a positive direction?
I have a whole rant about this in the play about how important it
Yeah,
is to have visibility and representation and to feel
yeah,
seen, and like that this is represented in our culture in a way where it's it's not as in the dark in the back of a closet. Um,
mm,
I don't think there's an easy solution. For me personally, it was about sharing it and telling individuals in my
mm,
life who I felt safe with and who I trusted. And as I practiced that, it became easier to tell people. to the point where now I can go on stage and tell people. But I
Yeah.
think I will say that when I first performed this show in 2021, I asked at the beginning how many people have heard of Trichotillomania. And ever since I started doing this 4 years ago, more and more people raise their hands than when I
Yeah.
started at the beginning of this. The beginning, there'd be like a couple. And now sometimes it's most of the
Mm.
audience have
Yeah.
already know about it, which is encouraging to me as it starts to be in more mainstream television shows and
Hmm.
isn't
Hmm.
just a joke or a punchline, but actually is given
Yeah.
the weight and time that it and respect that it deserves. I think that
Yeah.
will continue to shift us in the right direction. And it's similar to, I mean, any mental disorder really, or behavior or condition or
Mm.
uh, there's such a lack of understanding about mental illness in general. And then when it's something that people haven't heard of, or it's easy to just dismiss as like a habit or just some like a weird thing that somebody does. Um,
Yeah.
I just think it's about exposure and visibility and normalizing it really, so
Mhm.
that it's not just this thing that a few people do. Like the statistics alone, which are so I don't like more people do it than we know because people don't talk
Yeah.
about it or they don't know. I've had multiple people see the show and realize that they have a BFRB from one.
Oh, this is me. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
because they're not really high up on the spectrum, so they never thought it was a
Hmm.
problem or thought to look it up. Or there are people who do know that they're high up on the spectrum but don't want to know what it is or don't want to talk to somebody about it. And
Mm.
um, I think the more, I used to like confide this secret in somebody and they'd be like, "Oh, I do that." It's like, "Oh, right.
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
a standard like self-grooming like human behavior that can get out of
Mm.
control." But
Mm.
I think the more, yeah, it's just about exposure so that more people know about it so that there's just more general understanding and compassion and empathy in general, which I think
Yeah.
help the people who feel like they have to hide it.
Yeah.
Because that, again, it's similar to the shame, is a driving force behind it.
Hmm. Well, I think you're doing an amazing job at,
Thanks.
you know, destigmatizing, BFRBs and hair pulling in particular. I've been to your website and you are you can add to it. I can't remember everything. I think it's co-founder, actor, writer, producer. You should include ambassador because you truly are
Oh,
a BFRB ambassador.
thank
Yeah,
you.
you're an incredible light to the community. So thank you for doing the show.
Clapping
Yay.
hands. Thank you.
And thank you for doing this. And
Absolutely.
acknowledging the participants as well. Like, thank you for participating and being part of this webinar. That's all small little, unconscious steps to try and uh, make things better from a stigma perspective. So we appreciate all of you. Um, yeah, thank you for all the love, everybody. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Talking about it to other people and sharing, you have a little session at the end of your show that you meet people and you greet them and tell us a little bit about that and how that part has impacted your journey.
Sure. Um, well, wait, are you referencing our talkbacks or just me getting to talk to audience members after?
The second part, the latter
Got it.
part. Yeah.
Yes, getting to interact with people after the show is extremely moving and healing and um, kind of the best part about this whole thing. I have strangers come up to me and tell me things they've never told their families, share their
Yeah.
secrets with me, or maybe
Yeah.
they just tell me that they remember now that they used to pull their hair, or they tell me their day count, or they tell me nothing and they just ask for a hug, or they
Yeah.
just say thank you. And
Mhm.
like it doesn't even need to be this. exchange of deep
Yeah.
secrets, even just the
Yeah.
people who have tears in their eyes who tell me that they feel seen by the show. Um,
Yeah.
and getting when I've gotten to talk to teenagers, especially, because I so much of the show is focused on me at that age, and when a young
Mm.
person comes up to me and says that this gives them hope, like I'm a mess. I like fall apart. And I've had people ask me, is it really heavy? Like, is it, I must be so exhausted after the show. And then to have to like hold these really intense exchanges with people, is that
Yeah.
hard for me? And it
Yeah.
actually is the opposite. It feels like a release or like a
Mm.
relief of that the exchange is it's like the other part of the evening. Here's my thing, and
Yeah.
now
Yeah.
either you share something or we just have a moment. And
Yeah.
I feel just as seen then as the person saying that to me does. And
Yeah.
it's, I mean, I leave on such a high. It's so uh special. And I mean, that's why I'm doing this. I say in the show, each time I hesitated about writing this because it felt too self-indulgent, I
Mm.
think to myself, what if I had seen this when I was 15? Another spoiler.
Mm-hmm.
It's a line from the end of the play. But that was always every time I started to just doubt it or be like, maybe this is too much, or I don't know, who wants to hear me talk this long, and all those
Mm-hmm.
thoughts that get in my way. I think about my younger self going to a show about this thing that
Yeah.
I thought was
Yeah.
my own secret, and seeing somebody being able to talk about it. That's just been a driving
Mm.
force. So every time I get to talk to an audience member, it is further evidence of, oh, okay, keep going, keep doing this. This is
Yeah.
working. This is
Yeah.
helping, and it's
Yeah.
helping me too. It's not a one-way street, which is why I think it works.
Mm.
I keep saying the word exchange, but I think that's
But
why.
it is, you're right. It's self-healing, but you're giving so much to others at the same time.
And they give it right back to me.
Yeah.
Is like
Yeah.
I am uh motivated by and lifted up by all the people that
Mm-hmm.
want to say hi after. And then the messages I get and the DMs and the emails, it's like every single one hits me in the gut. It does not
Yeah.
get old, and it will never get old. It is, I feel really honored that people want to talk to me.
Well, isn't it so amazing though that trick and skin picking is such an isolating thing, yet you've managed to like flip that on its head and you're able to connect with so many people and have such incredible moments and connections with them. It's
Exactly.
just it's incredible. It's
Yeah,
amazing.
it's taking this extremely isolating thing and moving
Yeah.
it toward a place of connection. It's
Yeah.
exactly that. So every time I'm tired or overwhelmed by how much work it is to produce another run, I
Yeah. Yeah.
I remember like the person who was at the show last night in the front row and crying, or just I could tell, or the person
Mm.
who said this to me the other
Mm.
night, or
Mm.
and then like, okay, it's for that person today.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. You, I hope you know that you're an incredibly inspiring person. And you have
Ah,
so much
thank you.
care and
That's
compassion for others.
Thank you, Meryl.
You're
Appreciate it.
welcome.
I will just try to receive that and and not
Yes.
deflect. Thank you.
Push it away.
Yeah.
No, take it. Um, our last question before we get to the Q&As from our participants. I think you've touched on this a little bit, but I want to specifically ask, so it's memorable. What has been the most rewarding part of sharing your story?
I mean, not to get repetitive, but what we were just talking about.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
No question. No question.
yeah,
It's been getting to meet people and connect with people and hear their stories and feel seen and see other people feel seen. And I would say like the highlight was getting to perform it for the BFRB conference in October. just because it took an already really charged performance and to it was just to do that for 60 people, the 60, there were more people at the conference, but those were the folks who were able to attend that night, and to
Yeah.
to have that many people in the audience who have had not the exact same experience as mine, of course, but
Hmm.
closer than somebody who doesn't have a BFRB, like to be in that room was extremely powerful, and it felt like a just a huge life event for me, not just as an artist doing
Hmm.
the show, but as a human having attended my first conference at 24 and to now go back and be a participant, be somebody who's
Yeah. On the other
presenting.
side. Yeah.
Like I'm going
Yeah.
to a conference in May, um,
Okay.
with National Alliance on Mental Illness, and I'm a keynote speaker and I'm doing the show, and
Amazing.
that's
Yeah.
nuts.
Yeah.
And um, yeah, having the opportunity to um, yeah, teach people about this and change people's minds, and also allow people who are in the same boat to feel represented is very important to me. And I
Mm.
feel very humbled and lucky that I get to be able to do that. But yes, the to answer your question, it's the people. It's getting to connect with people.
Yeah. Amazing. Thank you. Um, Thank you so much for uh, just sharing so much about your story and being vulnerable and um, myself. I really appreciate it, and I know that the participants who are in the webinar right now and those who will view it later on also appreciate it too. And we can see that all the hearts. So thank you. We have some questions in the Q&A, so I'm going to do my best to get through all of them. Okay, so the first question uh, is how did you stop? So what were the key steps to getting better?
So I'm going to quote myself. I'm going to quote the play and
Yeah.
and say, as for the ways I tried to stop, it's not a satisfying answer in terms of practicality. There isn't. I always was looking for, the right, like and there is no easy fix. There's no
Hmm.
magic pill yet, anyway. And um, it was uh, sharing with friends, um, having a community around me, going to support groups so that I like learning that I'm not alone in this, and talking to people who are experiencing the same thing. Um, a good therapist. And if you see the play, you'll know that I did not have good therapists for quite a good chunk of time. Um, and kind of those exercises that I was mentioning but before, like putting out those photos and reading my journal, and um, uh, using all the tools in my toolbox, even if it's
Mm.
my fidgets and my
Hmm.
um, gloves or band-aids or whatever it is, to bringing intentionally choosing to use that and use all those tools, and um, having patience with my oops, I pressed a button. Having patience with myself and self-compassion is, and I also I make this very clear in the show. I'm not 100% pull free. I don't know if that actually exists. It might for people.
Hmm.
When I was younger, I thought that meant that was the thing that I had to do in order to
Hmm.
be in recovery and in order to be successful. Um,
Yeah.
but that's not been my experience. It used to be if I started to pull even just one or two hairs, it was a slippery slope and I would binge and lose control. Now it's more of if I pull, again, I say in the play, I pivot, I stop, I go get a drink of water, I take a break. I see it as a cue, as a signal that I need something,
Uh-huh.
rather
Yeah.
than an opportunity to just berate myself or be like, oh, I can't
Yeah.
believe you did that. So I see, yeah, I didn't stop. I uh, but I stopped enough.
Hmm.
Is that I don't and again it's not a I'm not on any meds. I tried that when I was younger. I never found anything that personally worked for me. I always wish I had, but the side effect, I'm really sensitive to anything, and the side effects would cause it just be more damaging than helpful. And um, for me, the main thing was sharing this with people and um, working on chipping away at the shame, which is the thing that was driving it for me, like I said before. So it's
Yeah.
talking about it, talking about it, talking about it, writing about it. Not
Hmm.
don't have to do a play about it, but write about it. Journal, um, find somebody, find people that you trust, and uh, it's also not a race. Everybody's journey. I mean, this took me. I'm 40, and I don't feel like I really had a handle on this till I was 37, and that's just right now. I had
Yeah.
3 years when I was in my 20s. I had 2 years here and there. Like it wasn't, but that was just about the behavior. That was just like, okay, I've got it. Check.
Mm,
I'm done.
mm,
I'm
mm,
fixed.
mm,
But there was so much more underneath that I needed to address, which is, I think, why I keep coming back to the shame. Like I can stop pulling, but if I don't deal with all the other stuff that's inside and all the other ways I'm thinking about myself, it's going to come back or it's going to manifest with my cuticles being absolutely destroyed or
yeah.
whatever the case may be. Yeah, I know that's not a super straightforward answer, but that's because it unfortunately isn't straightforward or linear.
Yeah.
It is an ongoing journey.
Exactly. And I think just to add to that, just to summarize, maybe, it's really important to have a toolbox, as you did mention. You have your toolkit, and that toolkit or that toolbox can be a combination of many different things. And some items in your toolbox might not work for me. That's why it's really important to have um, an extensive resource. So you can experience and experiment each one and see, which one feels a good fit. Part of that obviously is therapy, making sure that you are seeing someone who can support and guide you during the journey, who can teach you, helpful coping strategies. You mentioned fidget. I mean, this is not a fidget technically per se. It's a rock. But anything of a fidget type of nature, other tools like your gloves. I think you mentioned the fingertip things. I can't remember if you mentioned
Oh,
that.
yeah, yeah. I never wore those, but
Yeah, yeah. Support groups and just connecting with people. So I mean, there's a huge amount of things that you can add to that resource list. There's another question here. You did touch on it in just your last answer, but they wanted to find out like why were you feeling shame in the first place, and why does it perpetuate the cycle?
I mean, I think that goes back to what we were talking about before with the stigma. I think the shame
Mm,
stems from this idea that we feel different and that people won't understand and that this is something we're not supposed to be doing. And
hmm
like, why can't we fix it? Why can't we get it under control? Why can't we stop? And there's still so much judgment, unfortunately, like societal judgment about people who are different. And especially when it's something that then visibly shows on your body, whether it's with scars or scabs or bald spots. Um, I think that's what spurs the need to hide and want to cover up because you don't want people to know that you're doing this thing
mm
that
mm
other people don't seem to have a problem with getting control over or don't do it. So what's wrong with me? And I think that then just perpetuates and uh, expounds upon itself. Did I use that word right? Um, I'm sure there's plenty of other things that drive it, but I know
mm
that if if I pull and I like it and I know that I don't want to like it and that it's weird that I like it, then I get mad at myself. Then I'm like, what's wrong with me? Why do I do this? I'm a freak. Those thoughts. And then what's that going to make me feel? Anxious,
Yeah.
depressed,
Yeah.
sad, worked up. Oh,
Yeah.
what's going to relieve that? What's going to make me feel better? Another hair or another pick.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that vicious
Yeah.
cycle is then
Yeah.
just, and I think it becomes just like a wash, a general wash of bad feelings.
Hmm.
And we can forget or not be able to pick out the individual moment to moment pattern that happens in the cycle like that. So many of these,
Yeah.
I'm seeing such good questions in here. I'm
They
so,
are.
but
And we're hitting close to the hour, so I want to try and answer a few more. And if we do run over a little bit, I do apologize. I want to answer this question, and then you'll get the opportunity to answer it as well if you want to add to it. But there's a question here like, what is your definition of a good therapist? So I'm not sure who said that. It was either you or me. But in my opinion, a good therapist is someone, first of all, is specialized. Let's start from the beginning. They're licensed. They're
Mhm.
they're 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 allowed to practice mental health and provide therapy. Second of all, this they are specialized in this field. They know what trichotillomania or a body repetitive focused disorder is, or they know what dermatillomania excoriation disorder is. So they understand this challenge, and because of that, they're able to meet you and support your needs. Um, so for me, that makes a good therapist is, specifically for these challenges, is someone who understands it, who has knowledge and experience about BFRBs, um, and obviously is available to provide you with that support and guidance. I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
yeah, and I think what I meant when I said it, I mean, yes to all those things, of course.
Yeah.
I also think it's about finding somebody who's a good match for you. And
Mhm.
uh, like I compare it to dating. Like you need
Yeah,
to mesh well. There needs to be a good personality match.
of course. I
Of
agree.
course, yes, I had people who were not educated enough and weren't experienced in this and were misguiding me. But I also then
Hmm.
had people who were, but maybe were giving me only tough love and really being really hard on me when I needed more validation. And then I saw somebody else who was only validating me, and I needed somebody to push me at that point and where I was. And so I found a person who knows what I need in the moment and can adapt, and our personalities match, and we speak the same language. Um,
Hmm.
and I don't just mean English. I mean we know our we're able to reach each other, and that's
Yeah,
what I mean by a good therapist,
yeah,
somebody
yeah.
who knows what you need and pushes you when you need it and validates when you need it. And for me, my therapist was the missing puzzle piece that I needed in my own
Hmm.
personal
Yeah.
journey with this. Oh, I
We
just
have
oh
we
sorry.
have time for one more question. So you get to pick the question. So you can pick
Oh
the last
no.
one if you would like to.
um, I'm just
I
reading.
just want to say while you're choosing, we have received quite a few questions here. But not only questions, we've just received acknowledgements and thanks for this particular webinar, and just love and appreciation for Becca. So we're reading everything, and thank you so much for all of the questions and comments.
Somebody asked, do you ever lose yourself in your character while
Yeah,
performing, almost forget you're
yeah,
telling your own story, which is
yeah.
such an interesting question. And
Uh-huh.
huh, I don't know. My instinct is to say no, but I actually don't know if that's true. I don't know if I've ever really thought about it in that way, that especially with some of the stories I tell. Actually, I would say, if anything, some of these stories, like the really hard ones of about my youth, I think at the time I was doing so much to separate myself from it and detach myself as a coping mechanism. So, in fact, performing it rather than losing myself in the character, I'm actually finding myself more and finding and really connecting to these stories and owning them, like taking ownership of things that happened to me and making them my stories that now I'm telling the way I want to tell them. And
Mhm.
so in a way, I guess performing it has it made me connect more to my character being. But I like to tell people that everything in the play is true. There,
Yeah,
except for a few
yeah,
changed names, there I don't
yeah, yeah.
exaggerate or dramatize or uh,
Mhm.
make things up. I wanted it to
Mm.
be real, which
Authentic. Yeah,
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 which otherwise I don't think people would uh, connect with it as much because if it's not authentic, people know that people can see that.
yeah.
I know there's other questions we're not getting to, but they're great.
They are. They are. We do appreciate it. We are very mindful and respectful of people's time, but we do see them, and they are all great questions. If you really wanted to get your question answered, you can send them to us, and I'm sure I can forward them on to Becca.
Absolutely.
So yeah, please send
You
us.
can email us or follow us on Instagram and
Yeah,
um,
yeah,
info@trickplay.com. Currently,
yeah.
I'm the person who manages the email. Until we hit it big and we have a big team, I will get back to you directly.
So I want to close off with that. How can people get hold of you? Through that
Uh,
email, socials?
yeah, social trick
Mhm.
play on Instagram. Is there a place where I can type this out? I don't see a chat.
There isn't, yeah.
TRICHPLAY, trick play on Instagram. Trickplay.com is our website. Info
Mhm.
at trickplay is our email. And yeah, follow us. You can subscribe to our newsletter on our website and hear from us about our next production or what else we have in the works. Um, and yeah, stay in touch. Maybe
Amazing.
we'll do this again sometime.
And just a reminder for everyone, if you worried that you didn't get all of that, this is recorded, so it will be on our YouTube channel, and in the description we'll add all the information and contact details. You can also, for the Skimpic community, you can email us Skimpic at support@skimpic.com, and for the Trichotillomania community, you can email us at support@trickstop.com. And I did promise that I will share a promo code for those who are interested in joining the program. You can get $100 off using the promo code webinar100. And we'd love to hear from you all. So again, once everything's on YouTube, please comment. You can add your questions there, or just share the love and your appreciation for the discussion. We'd love to hear from you. Um, Participants, thank you so much for being here. And Becca, I really appreciate, I know that you're incredibly busy, especially this week. So I really
We're
appreciate you taking
mid-run.
the time
I'm so
to,
glad we were able to make this work though, and I really appreciate everyone
yeah, me
staying
too.
on for the hour and visiting
Yeah,
and asking questions
yeah.
and chatting. And Meryl, you're very good at this. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
I haven't been interviewed that much yet. It's still pretty early,
Yeah,
but I've done a few. I've had a fair share, and you know what you're doing. You're good at maintaining the conversation and asking good questions. I just appreciate
I'm
that.
glad. Thank you. You're so welcome. Thanks so much, everybody. And we'll see each other soon at the next webinar.
See you soon.